The corridor lights dimmed to their night cycle as Varric moved through the warship's inner sanctum, his massive form casting long shadows against the metal walls. His claws clicked softly against the deck plating, a sound that typically sent subordinates scattering. Tonight, however, he moved with unusual care, mindful of the hour and the precious cargo sleeping somewhere in these quarters. The Karzathi were apex predators by evolution and warriors by culture. Their empire had conquered 17 systems before humanity had even achieved faster-than-light travel. Varric himself stood nearly 8 feet tall, his midnight fur rippling over corded muscle, his fangs capable of crushing bone. He was alpha of the warship Crimson Talon, commander of 3,000 warriors, and father to 2 cubs who represented the future of his bloodline. Those cubs were currently in the care of the human. Varric's ear twitched at the memory of the crew's reactions when he'd made that decision. Humans were new to the galactic stage, barely a century since first contact. They were small, soft, lacking claws or natural armor. Most species viewed them as curiosities at best, easy prey at worst. The Karzathi had certainly thought so when humanity's colony ships first drifted into contested space. They had learned otherwise. The Battle of Proxima's Edge had taught the galaxy what humans meant by stubborn. Outnumbered 5-1, the human defense fleet had fought for 3 weeks straight. They'd strapped themselves into their cockpits and simply refused to stop. Refused to surrender. Refused to die easily. When their ships were crippled, they rammed. When their weapons failed, they improvised. Varric had watched a human pilot hold a breach in their hull closed with their own body, so their crew could escape. It was impressive, disturbing, admirable. The treaty that followed was built on mutual respect earned through mutual bloodshed. Cultural exchange programs began. The Karzathi Empire agreed to host human liaisons aboard their vessels. That was how Rhea had come to the Crimson Talon. Varric approached the door to the designated quarters, his hand hovering over the panel. Through the door he could hear nothing, a good sign, he supposed. His cubs, Thorin and Zara, were at that age where silence either meant sleep or mischief. Given the late hour, he hoped for the former. The door whispered open. Varric froze. The room was configured for rest, the lights reduced to the barest amber glow. In the center, upon the cushioned platform that served as a sleeping area, lay Rhea. The human was small even by her species standards, barely 5.5 feet tall, with delicate features and soft brown hair that fell in waves around her face. She wore simple sleep clothes and her breathing was slow and steady, curled against her. One on each side were his cubs. Thorin, his son, had his head resting on Rhea's shoulder, one small paw draped across her chest. The cub's face was peaceful, his young features still soft with youth, tiny fangs barely visible in his slightly open mouth. Zara, his daughter, was nestled into Rhea's other side, her tail wrapped loosely around the human's arm. The cub's ears twitched occasionally in her sleep, responding to some dream chase playing out behind closed eyes. Rhea herself had both arms around the cubs, holding them with a protective gentleness that made something in Varric's chest constrict oddly. He should have been furious. These were Karzathi cubs born of the Alpha bloodline. They should be learning to sleep alone, to be strong, to trust only their own strength and their pack's power. Instead, they were cuddled against an alien, a human, a creature from a species the Karzathi had been at war with mere years ago. And yet, Varric's combat-trained instincts read the scene with perfect clarity. Rhea's positioning was deliberate. She'd arranged herself to be equally accessible to both cubs, ensuring neither felt favored. Her arms provided security without restraint, allowing them to move if needed. Even in sleep, she maintained an awareness. He could see the subtle tension in her frame, the readiness of someone who would wake at the first sign of distress. She was guarding them. The realization settled over Varric like a tactical assessment clicking into place. This wasn't weakness. This wasn't some human sentimentality corrupting his offspring. This was a warrior of a different kind, employing weapons his species had never properly developed. Humans called it caregiving. The galaxy was still learning what that truly meant. Varric had seen Rhea's file, civilian designation, but her psych profile was remarkable. High empathy, extreme patience, unshakable calm under pressure. The human military had tried to recruit her 3 times. She'd refused combat roles but had volunteered for the liaison program instead. Someone needs to teach peace, her application had stated simply. The cubs had been terrified of her at first, as was proper for Karzathi young meeting an unknown predator. Rhea had handled their hissing and posturing with remarkable composure. She'd sat down, made herself small, and simply waited, for hours. When Thorin had finally crept close enough to sniff her hand, she'd remained perfectly still. When Zara had tested her with a nip, drawing blood, Rhea had only smiled and said, "Good instincts, little one." Within a week, the cubs followed her everywhere. Within 2 weeks, they slept better in her presence than they ever had in the nursery. Within 3 weeks, Varric had stopped questioning the arrangement and simply accepted what his instincts told him. His cubs were safe. Now, watching them breathe in synchronized contentment, Varric understood something that would have been heresy to speak aloud in the warrior halls. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't their stubbornness in battle or their frightening capacity for violence when threatened. It was this ability to nurture fiercely, to protect without dominating, to gentle the savage without destroying the strength. Rhea hadn't made his cubs weak, she'd made them secure. And secure cubs would grow into confident warriors. Varric's species conquered through strength. Humans conquered through connection. Perhaps, he thought as he carefully backed out of the room, that was why the galaxy would never truly defeat them. You could kill a human warrior. You could destroy a human ship. But how did you fight a species whose civilians could walk into a warship and make even the Alpha's cubs trust them? The door whispered shut. Varric stood in the corridor for a long moment, his tail swaying thoughtfully. Tomorrow, the ship would continue its patrol route. Diplomatic functions would proceed. His cubs would wake and resume their chaotic energy, and Rhea would guide them through their day with that infinite patience of hers, teaching them things the warrior creches never could. Tonight, though, they all rested under the protection of something more powerful than claws or fangs. They rested under the care of a human who had chosen to love what others feared. And Varric, Alpha of the Crimson Talon, conqueror of systems and commander of thousands, found that he could accept this strange new reality. He turned and padded back toward his own quarters, a small smile playing at his fanged mouth. Perhaps humanity's place in the galaxy was exactly where they chose to make it. In the quiet spaces between conflicts. In the gentle moments no warrior had thought to defend. In the soft revolution of simply caring when caring seemed foolish. Yeah, indeed.